The Walt Disney Company is sweating bullets because they have 3 failures on the way. First of all, The Marvels has already become the biggest box office flop in cinematic history. Wish is coming out to lackluster reviews and does not look to be performing well. If it gets first place, it will be a very underwhelming first place at the domestic box office. And that even will be given a 6-day weekend, if you can believe that they're actually calling it that. But now also they have Rachel Zegler, who is their competitor. But also they need to do well because, well, she's leading in to the Snow White movie in 2025, which is going to cost an insane amount of money. And Rachel Zegler is not doing well. The Hunger Games prequel is coming in at less than half of what any other Hunger Games movie has ever done before, and that's not taking into account a number of factors that make this all the worse. Should Disney be ready to pull the plug on Snow White, and what's going on with the rest of the box office that has audiences turning away this Thanksgiving? Hello folks, and welcome back to the channel where we are putting Holly weird through the lens of common sense. They don't like it, but we do it each and every day. Joining us today is Michelle of Force of Light and Lou Wasserman's Ghost. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, folks, let's dive straight into the conversation today about Rachel Zegler and the fact that she is underperforming greatly at the Hunger Games prequel. However, is it her fault? Is it her fault that Trolls is besting a franchise that should have done quite well? This is out of the AP, the Associated Press. Hollywood's feast and famine before Thanksgiving as Hunger Games prequel tops the box office, and there is the aforementioned Rachel Zegler. Diminutive, but still, well, not so strong at the box office. We wish she was. This by Lindsay Barr. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, topped the North American box office in its first weekend in theaters with $44 million in ticket sales, according to studio estimates Sunday. It was a busy weekend at the multiplex. Was it really? No. Leading into the often lucrative Thanksgiving corridor. And while there was plenty to choose from at the buffet, not everything could be a hit. And by that, Lindsay means nothing was a hit. Audiences had The Marvels, which plummeted a record 78% in its second weekend, as well as the nationwide debuts of the family-friendly Trolls World Tour. Taika Waititi's soccer comedy Next Goal Wins and an R-rated slasher Thanksgiving were all in wide release. Now, how bad was it, folks? Well, it's this bad. If you combine the top 3 films going into Thanksgiving week, and each one of those is, by the way, a tent pole for their respective studios, you've got, of course, Trolls, which has been a massive franchise for families. You have The Marvels, which is, well, a Marvel film and therefore should be spectacular. And then you've got The Hunger Games, which traditionally and historically has topped $100 million with every single entry. Even the lowest points of this franchise has topped $100 million at the box office in its domestic opening. All 3 of these films combined failed to top $100 million total at the box office. And that is a real problem for theaters. It goes on to talk about this. It says The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is an interesting case study for a franchise that's been dormant for 8 years and is testing the waters for a new era. It's $44 million from 3,776 locations, including a bunch of premium spots, marks a low for films carrying the Hunger Games title. And here's what they mean by that. All 4 prior films broke $100 million in their first weekends. This one came in at less than half of that. But the question I have for the panel today is, whose fault is this? And so I want to start with Michelle. Trolls Band Together has defeated Rachel Zegler and, by the way, Brie Larson, which means it's the first time ever that Trolls actually, factually have defeated these ladies. They've claimed it for many, many years. But finally, I agree with them. Trolls really did defeat them. Michelle, whose fault is this? Is it that the franchise is just too far gone? Is it that the concept was not the right way to go? Or is it perhaps Rachel Zegler herself, who is not the darling of the box office like we have seen in the past?
Okay, I would say that the main culprit here is the concept itself. I love the Hunger Games when it came out, read all the books, just destroyed those books. They were so good. Enjoyed the movies, but I bought this one when it came out, and I was listening to it. I actually read through the other ones. I was listening to this one, which I enjoyed doing, and I could not get through this book. It was too depressing. Just the mood was very and it was boring. And that's why I think the main thing is just the concept, because this concept of following a young Snow, who actually is the main character, which the story is told through his perspective, that is very different than doing the prequels with Anakin Skywalker, who, one, people really did love Darth Vader. And secondly, we know Darth Vader was redeemed at the end, which made seeing Anakin's rise and fall interesting. Where in this case, it'd basically be like if they decided to do a movie about a young man in Germany with the initials AH. We all know where the story ends, and it doesn't end well or redemptive in any way. So I think that's the main corporate. And then secondly, Rachel Zegler probably doesn't help things at this point, but I think that's very secondary to the actual just story issue.
Well, I think you've raised every single point you just said. I totally agree with you. That last point I want to key in on, that Rachel Zegler doesn't help, because that may be the most damaging part of this narrative that I think is going to come out of this, and perhaps it's just reality.
It might even be why she got cast, because they thought, gee, she's a rising star, she'll lift this thing. So she isn't necessarily hurting it, but she's not doing him any favors either.
Lou, when you cast a Rachel Zegler, and studios have often gone to her, and she has not yet been at the helm of a movie that has made money. Now, this film, and folks, go watch Valiant Renegade for the full-on explanation. We're not going to go deep into this one, but this one has a really quirky kind of financing system behind it. So it may make money technically, it may make money, but at the box office, it doesn't look good. And it's way underperforming the prior films. Lou, when an actress such as this is cast, how many times do you think you get cast in a major role thinking that you're going to give a lift and bring in the TikTok generation? How many times does that happen if that never manifests?
Well,
how many more chances does she get?
I'm trying to remember if the West Side Story movie actually made a major dent, because I don't think it did.
No,
it lost a lot.
If Spielberg can't make it happen, she certainly can't. And most of what we're talking about her about lately is a movie that we won't see for another year now, which is The Seven Dwarfs and, or whatever they are this week. We were joking before, Pro and I, that I looked it up. She's 5'2". So for her to find people smaller for all these movies, between Trolls beating her up this time and Dwarves before, I thought about it, Pro, and I thought, well, what does Disney own IP-wise? First of all, could they put her in a live-action Moana with Menahunis?
Hey, maybe that was the way to go, was Moana for her. I don't know.
Or I thought, what about Darby O'Gill and the Little People? Darby is a unisexual name, and that was the movie that got Sean Connery James Bond,
That's a great point.
You never know. And then my joke to you was that she shouldn't do anything with leprechauns because she's obviously not a lucky charm when it comes to the box office.
Well, and for those of you also who you can't be aware of this, but Lou is often sending me different ideas and different things that people have come up with for names and monikers for these movies and for the characters behind them, and it's all very funny. But you're exactly right. I'd never thought about this. She's so short, and no offense to anybody who is shorter than she, but she is quite short. And so if you had dwarfs with Snow White, well, they might be just as tall as she is at that point. So I don't know how that would go.
The other reason for casting her, I haven't seen the movie, but I understand she sings in it. And if you think about it, once upon a time in Hollywood, we had lots of singing actresses and or people who were overdubbed by other people. But there aren't that many anymore. And so if that was the point, was her musical talent, I mentioned to Pro before we started that I looked up her height, and you know how when you go look up how tall is, they give you all the other questions people are asking on Google. People were asking, is she a soprano? And there is a quote from her in her own Twitter feed, X, quote, "Sometimes I forget I'm a soprano." How do you forget you're a soprano?
Because she's so good, Lou. She can sing all the parts. She doesn't remember that she's supposed to be confined.
I bet her basso is not very profundo. But then I don't think much of what she's done is profundo either. And I hate to keep beating up on her because, hey, she is her own worst enemy, but she's had a lot of help.
The other thing, Lou, is that we're pulling for her to one day pull out of this. And so part of that, of course, is the ability to go back and say, here's where I went wrong, here's how I correct this, and here's how I'm going to go forward. And then you're always going to have your detractors, but you might actually find some people who are willing to say, you know what? Rachel Zegler has come around and she's not vitriolic. She's not spouting this nonsense. But you were talking about Profundo. Take a look at the numbers for the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. This was the lowest for the franchise, the previous low. This is what stopped it. Of course, it was the finale as well, but out of 2015. And if we go down here to look at the first weekend domestic, we can see that it made $102 million domestic. Now, 2015, movie ticket prices were way less. And in 2015, you also had one day less for your first weekend because typically movies did not debut to multiple screenings on a Thursday, although they would be available Friday at midnight, and that was the preview. So we're, again, comparing apples and oranges here in that this film, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, had 3 days. Hunger Games Prequel has 4 days. Movie ticket prices are greatly inflated today. And so if you look at this, in today's terms, this film, the last one in the low point there, would have probably made at least $150 million just based on an extra day and much lower movie ticket prices in the past. However, this film that we're watching now out of Rachel Zegler, and it's making $45 million in its opening, and it's going into the Thanksgiving week, which is a big week for the box office. So overall, I've got to say that even if this makes money from some sort of financial finagling in the background, it's still got to be a major disappointment. Michelle, where are we going to go with the Hunger Games? Do you think this franchise has a future still, or is this going to be something that kind of tapers off and sits back in history for a while?
I don't really think there's anywhere to go. I mean, I actually thought about this recently. I think had they done, and I know, again, with prequels, the problem is they can only have so much suspense because if it's characters we know that they're going to make it. And that is kind of problematic with the Hunger Games situation. But I was just thinking, I would have much rather them have gone, if we were getting a character we knew in the originals, I would have rather have seen a young Haymitch survive the Hunger Games. And see his whole story told. Of course, that being Woody Harrelson's character. But I think the only way to go is if you just kind of tell like year 25, the 25th annual Hunger Games, and we follow some new character. Because no one really wants, again, I just think going with Snow was a horrible idea. So I guess there's somewhere to go if you move into the games and Snow's already bad, but we definitely don't. I just think this concept wasn't the best.
Again, I confess my unfamiliarity with the source material, but were these all the books there are?
Yes, there were the original 3, which they made 4 movies of, and then years later, the writer Suzanne Collins, I believe is her name, they did this book, which went 65 years before the original. So
first of all, as you've said, and it's so true, a prequel that says, let me tell you how come the villain became a stinker and the guy you hate, and there's no redeeming value, as they used to say about other things. That's a mistake. But secondly, we've all been talking about all these different franchises about the dearth of creativity. Mm-hmm. What, they couldn't come up with a new plot? They couldn't come up with something that went from where the other ones left off as opposed to this? And they were, I can understand why she wrote another book, even if she was tapped out. They said, here's a lot of money, write something, we'll pay you. But that doesn't mean that's got to be the next movie. Mm-hmm. They own the franchise, they own the rights, she'll still get paid, but somebody out there in all of the writers could have written something new. But it doesn't happen anymore.
This concept of having the ultimate villain, someone who is not in any way redemptive, mm-hmm. Having their backstory explained and making them sympathetic, that doesn't seem to have worked very well, with one exception. I'll give you an example of something that failed in doing that, and I think it's in the same vein as the Cruella movie that Disney attempted to do. It performed extraordinarily poorly, and people just, you can't really connect with a truly evil person. If you can, maybe it's time to go to the therapist. But the other issue,
there aren't enough of you to fill the theaters on Thanksgiving weekend.
Well, let's all pray that's true. But there was one exception to that, and that was, of course, the Joker. The Joker movie came out, and I don't think that the Joker is a character that we can easily feel empathy towards. And at the same time, that did well, but I'm not sure exactly what that tapped into, other than trying to explain the psychological undergirding of someone going into anarchy and chaos and all of that. And so perhaps that was more of a psychological thriller. And so maybe there is a doorway there, but this
I
certainly is not a psychological thriller.
I don't think the Joker would have worked without the dark turn of all of the Batman stuff that came before. Because it was
Mhm.
like, as long as you're already into the mood for something dark and nasty, here you go. And then you say, yeah, okay, that goes along with everything else. But if it was, Jack Nicholson and then this, I don't know if that would have worked.
So
Well,
I want to give you two. Go ahead, Michelle, with your thought.
I was just going to say Joker 2, something people have to realize, I would say that arguably Darth Vader and Joker are the two most iconic villains of all time. So I think it's not wise to compare doing any story to whether an Anakin Skywalker story / Vader story did or a Joker story, because they're just so iconic. And though they were horrible, people enjoy watching them. There's a likability in a weird way. Of course,
That's a
with
good
Vader,
point.
it's much more easy to understand our likability. But I mean, Joker is equally pretty much as iconic.
Well,
And I
and the other
think
thing about Joker is when they made the first Batman with Michael Keaton, that's who they could have picked any of those villains. They did Penguin next. They could have done Riddler. Riddler was the first episode of the '66 TV series. So they had a choice and they picked the right one because that whole story of him being the guy that shot Wayne's parents, that wasn't originally part of the story. The idea that they told in that movie, which I mentioned, I watched the other night after we all got done with the long stream, and I saw the backstory, and we all talk about overshoots and budgets and craziness. You know how many weeks they took to shoot the original? 12 weeks,
oh
period.
my gosh.
No
Wow.
reshoots. But why? Because they took a year and a half to get the script right and get the casting
Right.
right.
And you wrote an article about just that issue
Oh,
with Hollywood
yes,
right now,
yes.
Lou, over on thatparkplace.com. Highly recommend it, folks.
Oh, well, thank you. And I just sent a second one up. But all I'm saying
What,
is when you can pick and choose and you choose right, it shows that the people choosing know what they're doing. When you talked about other characters that could have been in the sequel here, the fifth movie, they picked the wrong one. If they picked the
Mhm.
bad guy who nobody likes and nobody wants to like, you have to at least want to, you know?
and you need someone in the roles that everybody's rooting for in their professional career. You need
Eh,
someone who is connecting. So I don't know if Iman Vellani, Miss Marvel, is that person now who understands how to connect with audiences. I don't know who that is, who that young star is going to be, but it doesn't seem that Rachel Zegler is that person. I also want to say that when it comes to portraying villains in a way that really connects with people, pay very close attention, folks, to Arcane Season 2 coming out on Netflix. I think that's going to just do extremely well. Now, of course, we're still a ways out from it. We'll see how they do. But when that comes out, I think they have actually found the secret sauce to portraying villains in a deep and complex way. Here's my question, though, to wrap up this conversation today. And either of you, whoever wants to go first, have at it. But this looks to me to be a disastrous box office week for Thanksgiving week. We're going to watch now Wish come out, and I am going to suffer through it to do a review for later today if you're watching this video at the time of release. But I think it's a battle on which movie is going to be number one, Wish or Trolls Band Together. And that's not good because Trolls Band Together is doing fine enough, but it shouldn't be number one with its numbers on a week such as this. So, to both of you, what is making the box office so weak? Why is this now metastasizing beyond just Disney? And it feels like Hollywood at large is disconnected with society at larger.
Well, in other words, you're asking why is this Thanksgiving different from all other Thanksgivings, as people of my group would ask in a different context? And the answer is Thanksgiving is a family holiday. And
Mhm.
it would be very interesting, and somebody like you or Jonas could go do the grunt work of it. I'm too old for that stuff. Go see what the big movies were on Thanksgiving weekends past. And yes, there will be the franchises and the big super whatevers, but there's going to be the planes, trains, and automobiles and all of the happy ending movies that
Mhm.
people knew walking in the door they weren't going to get sad afterwards or depressed or have to think too hard for that matter, because hey, it's after this or just before that we all have turkey together and we're happy. And
it's hard to think with all that starch, isn't it, Lou?
well, not only that, when you consider there's all these joke memes about how you handle politics at Thanksgiving. People are pretty damn divided right now anyway. And
I think that's why we eat turkey, because it puts you to sleep, so it eliminates the fighting.
God bless tryptophan. That is the origin, That is the origin of the term a turkey for a failed show on Broadway, was that there used to be these places that gave all turkey dinners all year long with the trimmings, and if an audience ate that, they fell asleep during the show. That's literally where the term turkey comes from, for a failure. Well, we got some turkeys this time.
Michelle, why are audiences already snoozing as if they have had turkey when they have not? What's cast them away, in your opinion?
Well, there's just been nothing that interests them, quite frankly, across the board. I do think I will be interested to see how, on the adult side of things, how Napoleon goes this week with Thanksgiving. And then also, I think I would say I think Hunger Games actually will, because it has a $100 million budget. I think it will creep up to where it makes money. It just won't be near as successful as the other ones. Because I'm probably going to go see something on Thursday, just because there's not a lot to do on Thanksgiving after you
I'm
eat.
so sorry, Michelle. Just to hear the way I feel like you're speaking on behalf of Americans all across the country when you say, I'll probably go watch something, I don't know.
I don't know what.
This is when you pull out the DVDs. You got the big screen, go for
That's
it.
true.
I just
That's
looked
right.
up Napoleon because I had a question about it. It's 157 minutes long.
Oh, yeah.
That could be a killer.
It's a big ask.
Not that it might
Yeah.
not be a great movie, but for Thanksgiving, that's a long run.
It's a long run, and
or a
it's
run in the
another.
middle. Oh, wait, it's between Waterloo and Austerlitz. I guess I can go to the bathroom while he talks to Josephine. Did you see the French are very mad about the movie because they say it shows him abusing Josephine, and we all know he never did that.
No.
They said it's that Englishman who directed it. They all hate us.
Well, I suspect that Napoleon will probably come in at best third place, and if it does, they'll probably consider that a victory. Not quite conquering the world this time, but Napoleon will do something.
If it had more relevance directly to an American audience, it could be another Oppenheimer in the sense of a historical, but it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, people know the allegedly short guy who apparently wasn't that short, somebody corrected in one of the other conversations, but they don't think about him. The English, yeah, they think about him a lot.
Well, something to follow closely this week, folks, will be which of the vertically challenged heroes or villains will win. Does Rachel Zegler beat Napoleon, or does Napoleon rise again? Well, somewhat. All right, folks, that's what we're going to be following. Please make sure you follow Michelle over at Force of Light. Click on her link down in the video description below. Excellent content all the time, and perhaps she will share with you all what it is she finally acquiesces to see on Thanksgiving. We'll find out what it is that presents itself as she goes to the theater and says, oh, no. And for us, folks, we'll continue to do what we do, which is explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve. Drop a like down below, share, subscribe. When you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Don't forget to drop a comment down below. We cover your comments. We care about what you think, unlike those rascally studios, which are not presenting you with the kind of stuff that you want to watch. Clearly, it's just numbers, folks. It's just the numbers. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, eat some turkey, go to sleep, and then keep having fun.
Listen up, my brothers and sisters. You've been listening to Phils and those with an agenda to destroy your brain cells for far too long. It's time to change your way of doing things. Hold up. TPP is the place to be. Covering the news so honestly. It's a team that's cool and tried and true. Ahead of the culture curve, they're trying to keep you. Jonas and Pro, they run the show, and they dragged in the bearded culture casino. You got Valiant and Lauren and Force of Light. Wonderful people, yeah, they're alright. They got weird bringing in people like Flora, but made no mistake with Lorena Creole. Amelia and John, stuttering guitarist. Martin and Tawny and someone called CMS. Fat Steven makes a bunch of all the graphics. Did I mention a partnership with Bending into Comics? Fat Sky is a guy and Doc Matt does the web stuff. There's probably some people I missed. I hope they're not telling you the news. That should be fun. With accurate info that's not been spun. You can figure it out as you will see. The TPP is the place to be.